Hi, it's Baga again. Okay, so we're going to read chapter 3, but we're going to summarize a little bit chapters 1 and 2. Chapters 1, remember the little boy, he wants to fly in airplanes. But he meets a cat, an old alley cat, and he brings the cat home because it's cold and wet. And he wants to get a saucer of milk, and the saucer of milk, the mom says, no, we're not going to feed the kitty cats because then you'll have to feed all the kitty cats in the neighborhood. So she kicks the cat out, and so he goes out and talks to the cat, and the cat has a suggestion. So the cat says, if you like airplanes and you like to fly, there's a dragon that I know about on the island of Tangerina, and that island is the dragon has a knot around its neck, and they use the dragon to fly across the water. So he says to the cat, if you can get there and free the dragon, then you can have kind of like an airplane, right? Kind of like your own personal airplane, but it's a dragon that he gets to ride. Okay, so that's our summary. That's where we are. So there he is. He's away on a boat. If you remember, the little kitty cat is waiting on the dock, and the little boy is on that ship, and he's in a bag that says cranberries. So we'll have to see why he brought that bag and why he got in. Okay, so here we go. My father finds the island. My father hid in the hold for 6 days and 6 nights. Twice he was nearly caught when the ship stopped to take on more cargo. But at last he heard a sailor say that the next port would be Cranberry. Remember, that's an island. And that they'd be unloading the wheat there. My father knew that the sailors would send him home if they caught him. So he looked in his knapsack and took out a rubber band and the empty grain bag with the label saying Cranberry. At the last moment, my father got inside the bag, knapsack and all, folded the top of the bag on the inside, and put the rubber band around the top. He didn't look exactly like the other bags, but it was the best he could do. Soon the sailors came to unload, and they lowered a big net into the hold and began moving the bags of wheat. So there's all the bags of wheat. But do you see this one? Doesn't it look like maybe there's a little boy inside there? I think that's where the little boy is. Suddenly, one sailor cried, "Great Scott! This is the queerest bag of wheat I've ever seen. It's all lumpy, but the label says it needs to go to Cranberry." The other sailors looked at the bag too, and my father, who was in the bag, of course, tried even harder to look like a bag of wheat. Then another sailor felt the bag, and he just happened to get a hold of my father's elbow. "I know what that is," he said. "This is a bag of dried corn on the cob." And he dumped my father into the big net along with the other bags of wheat. Then this all happened in the late afternoon, so late that the merchant in Cranberry who ordered the wheat didn't count his bags until the next morning. He was a very punctual man and never was late for dinner. The sailors told the captain, and the captain wrote down on a piece of paper that he had delivered 160 bags of wheat and 1 bag of dried corn on the cob. Then they left the piece of paper for the merchant and sailed away that evening. My father heard later that the merchant spent the whole next day counting and recounting the bags and feeling each one, trying to figure out and find the bag of dried corn on the cob. He never found it because, as you know, soon after it was dark, my father climbed out of the bag, folded it up, and put it back in his knapsack. And he walked along the shore to a nice sandy place and lay down to take a sleep. There he is. He was probably tired. My father was very hungry, and when he woke up the next morning, just as he was looking to see if he had anything left to eat, something hot hit him in the head. It was a tangerine. He had been sleeping right under a tree full of big fat tangerines. And then he remembered that this was the island of Tangerina. Tangerina trees grew wild everywhere. My father picked as many as he had room for, which was 31, and started off to find Wild Island. Because remember, Wild Island is where the dragon is. He walked and walked and walked along the shore, looking for the rocks that joined the two islands. He walked all day, and when he met a fisherman and asked him about Wild Island, the fisherman began to shake and couldn't talk for very long. It scared him that much just thinking about it. Finally, he said, "Many people have tried to explore Wild Island, but not one of them has come back alive. We think they were eaten by the wild animals." This didn't bother my father. He kept walking and slept on the beach again that night. It was beautifully clear the next day, and down the shore my father could see a long line of rocks leading out into the ocean, and way out at the end, he could just see a tiny patch of green. He quickly ate 7 tangerines and started down the beach. It was almost dark when he came to the rocks, but there, way out in the ocean, was a patch of green. He sat down and rested a while, remembering that the cat had said, if you can, go out to the island at night, because then the wild animals won't see you coming along the rocks, and you can hide when you get there. So my father picked 7 more tangerines, put on his black rubber boots, and waited until dark. It was a very black night when my father could hardly see the rocks ahead of him. Sometimes they were quite high, and sometimes the waves almost covered them, and they were slippery and hard to walk on. Sometimes the rocks were far apart, and my father had to get a running start and leap from one to the next. After a while, he began to hear a rumbling noise. It grew louder and louder, and he got nearer to the island. At last, it seemed as if he was right on top of the noise, and he was. He jumped from rock to rock onto the back of a small whale who was fast asleep and cuddled up between the rocks. The whale was snoring and making more noise than a steam shovel, so it never heard my father. "Oh, I didn't know that was you." And it never knew my father had jumped on its back by mistake. So here's a picture of the boy, and he jumped on the little baby whale. It's kind of fun. I'd like to jump across those. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, let's see. For 7 hours, my father climbed and slipped and leapt from rock to rock. But while it was still dark, he finally reached the very last rock and stepped off onto Wild Island. Oh my goodness. There he is. That's Lily in the background. Okay, so chapter 4. We've read 3 chapters so far. My father finds the river. The jungle began just beyond a narrow strip of beach, thick, dark, damp, scary jungle. My father hardly knew where to go, so he crawled under the wahoo bush to think, and ate 8 tangerines. The first thing to do, he decided, was to find the river, because the dragon was tied somewhere along the bank. Then he thought, if the river flows into the ocean, I ought to be able to find it quite easily if I just walk along the beach far enough. So my father walked until the sun rose, and he was quite far from the ocean rocks. It was dangerous to stay near them because they might be guarded in the daytime. He found a clump of tall grass and sat down. Then he took off his rubber boots and ate 3 more tangerines. He could have eaten 12, but he hadn't seen any tangerines on this island, and he could not risk running out of something to eat. My father slept all day and only woke up late in the afternoon when he heard a funny little voice saying, "Queer, queer, queer, queer. What a dear little rock. What a dear little dock. I mean, what a queer little rock." My father saw a tiny paw rubbing itself on his knapsack. He lay very still, and the mouse, for it was a mouse, hurried away, muttering to itself, "I smell something tumbly-dee. I smell somebody. I must tell somebody." There's the mouse. It's a cute little mouse. He's running away to tell someone, though. I wonder what he's going to say. My father waited a few minutes and then started down the beach because it was almost dark now. And he was afraid the mouse really would tell somebody, and he walked all night, and 2 scary things happened. First, he just had to sneeze, so he did. And somebody close by said, "Is that you, Monkey?" My father said, "Yes." Then the voice said, "You must have something on your back, Monkey." And my father said, "Yes," because he did. He had the knapsack on his back. "What do you have on your back, Monkey?" asked the voice. And my father didn't know what to say, because what would a monkey have on its back? And how would it sound telling someone about it if it did have something? Just then, another voice said, "I bet you're taking your sick grandmother to the doctor's." My father said, "Yes," and hurried on. Quite by accident, he found out later that he had been talking to a pair of tortoises. The second thing that happened was that he nearly walked right between 2 wild boars who were talking in low, solemn whispers. When he first saw the dark shapes, he thought they were boulders. Just in time, he heard one of them say, There are 3 signs of a recent invasion. First," there they are. There's the wild boars. And do you see my father's dragon? I mean, not my father. You see him right there? He's in the bushes, and he's watching them. And this is what they're saying. There's an invasion. First, there are tangerine peels under the wahoo bush near the ocean rocks. Second, a mouse reported an extraordinary rock some distance from the ocean rocks, which upon further investigation simply wasn't there. However, more fresh tangerine peels were found in the same spot, which is a third sign of invasion. Since tangerines do not grow on our island, somebody must have brought them across the ocean rocks from the other island, which may or may not have something to do with the appearance and disappearance of an extraordinary rock reported by the mouse. After a long silence, the other boar said, I think we're taking all this too seriously. Those peels probably floated over here all by themselves. And you know how unreliable mice are. Besides, if there had been an invasion, I would have seen it. Perhaps you're right, said the first boar. Shall we retire? Whereupon both trundled back into the jungle. With that, that taught my father a lesson. And after that, he saved all his tangerine peels. He walked all night and toward morning came to the river. Then his troubles really began. And there's our tortoises that asked the monkey. They thought he was the monkey carrying his grandma on his back to the doctor, do you think? Okay, we're going to stop here. And we'll read the next one in the next video.